Hi there, and welcome back to Lean Reads, the channel where we share powerful insights and personal growth lessons through great books. What if happiness isn't about where you live, but how you live? In the Geography of Bliss, Eric Weiner travels from the happiest nations to the least happy ones, uncovering surprising truths about culture, wealth, and human nature. If you enjoy what you hear and want to dive deeper, we've included a link to the book in the description below. Now, let's get started. Which nation is the happiest in the world? And by what criteria do we even measure happiness? The Geography of Bliss, 2008, by Eric Weiner, seeks to answer these questions, traveling through both the happiest and unhappiest countries on Earth. Weiner blends personal storytelling with research and statistics to uncover surprising insights into what happiness really means. For curious readers longing to understand how to live more joyfully, this book is both informative and entertaining. Eric Weiner is an American author and speaker, best known for his explorations of culture and happiness. He worked as a foreign correspondent for National Public Radio in New Delhi, Jerusalem, and Tokyo, and has received the Angel Award for Excellence in Journalism. His essays have appeared in major newspapers such as the Los Angeles Times and the Washington Post. His best-selling books have been translated into more than 20 languages. The American Declaration of Independence, 1776, famously proclaims that all men are created equal and endowed with the right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Many nations since then have adopted this philosophy, treating happiness as a central goal of governance. But how exactly can a nation make its citizens happy? By investing in healthcare and education? By lowering taxes? Each country has its own strategies for happiness. Eric Weiner traveled around the world to study them, collecting lessons, stories, and contradictions along the way. Far from a dry sociological study, the Geography of Bliss is witty, engaging, and full of cultural and historical details. It combines humor with science, personal anecdotes with global research, making it one of the most enjoyable explorations of happiness ever written. The Netherlands, the world's happiness hub. When people hear about happiness research or measuring happiness, they often react with surprise. After all, happiness seems abstract, subjective, and personal. How can it be measured? The answer, Weiner suggests, begins in the Netherlands, a country often described as the Mecca of happiness studies. Each year, the Dutch host numerous conferences dedicated to happiness, where researchers compare notes and methods. One of the most influential figures in this field is Professor Ruud Veenhoven, sometimes called the world's leading happiness expert. He founded the Journal of Happiness Studies and compiled the groundbreaking World Database of Happiness, which aggregates data and surveys from 148 countries. This database has become a critical resource for scholars worldwide, including Eric Weiner himself. The findings are fascinating, sometimes even paradoxical. Married people report higher levels of happiness than singles. Republicans are happier than Democrats. Wealthy people are generally happier than the poor. Men and women report roughly equal levels of happiness. But contradictions abound. Some of the happiest countries also have unusually high suicide rates. Religious individuals are often found to be happier than secular ones, yet secular nations dominate the top of happiness rankings. It is no surprise, then, that the Netherlands has become the center of global happiness studies. Surveys consistently rank it among the happiest countries in the world. Why? The Dutch enjoy wealth, democracy, tolerance, and a highly effective welfare system. They are famously permissive toward prostitution, soft drugs, and immigration. But how do researchers actually measure happiness? The simplest method is surprisingly direct: surveys in which people are asked to rate their own happiness on a scale. This subjective self-reporting has become the foundation for many global happiness rankings. Switzerland, happiness through discipline, equality, and nature. Another nation that consistently ranks high on the happiness charts is Switzerland. When you think of Switzerland, what comes to mind? The iconic Matterhorn Peak, the medieval Schillen Castle, or the majestic Alpine ranges? For many, the country's most enduring symbol is the Zittglogge clock tower in Bern, built between 1218 and 1220. The clock represents discipline, and for the Swiss, discipline is at the heart of happiness. Everything in Switzerland runs like clockwork. Trains depart on schedule, roads are pothole-free, and public bathrooms and sidewalks are immaculately clean. These may not produce sudden bursts of joy, but they remove the irritations that often prevent happiness. Imagine starting your day navigating bumpy, trash-strewn streets. How cheerful would you feel afterward? The Swiss know that eliminating sources of misery is just as important as pursuing pleasure. Beyond discipline, Swiss culture avoids the corrosive effects of wealth inequality. Talking openly about money or flaunting wealth is considered bad taste. The Swiss understand that envy fueled by constant comparison is a major obstacle to happiness. Their philosophy contrasts sharply with the American ethos of, if you've got it, flaunt it. Interestingly, the Swiss also approach death with remarkable composure. Assisted suicide is legal and culturally accepted, seen not as a shameful act, but as a safe and legitimate choice. This perspective reduces fear and anguish, creating a society that accepts mortality rather than recoiling from it. And of course, the natural beauty of the Alps plays a profound role in Swiss happiness. Biologist E.O. Wilson highlighted this in his biophilia hypothesis, 1984, suggesting that human beings have an innate genetic affinity for nature's beauty. Research supports this. In 1984, psychologist Roger Ulrich studied patients recovering from gallbladder surgery and found that those who imagined forests or gardens healed more quickly than others. The Swiss, surrounded daily by breathtaking landscapes, embody this principle. Bhutan, a nation that measures happiness. Next stop on our journey is the tiny Himalayan kingdom of Bhutan, nestled between China and India. For anyone who has ever dreamed of living like a monk in peace and simplicity, Bhutan feels like paradise. What makes Bhutan truly unique is its approach to national policy. While Western nations focus on gross domestic product, GDP, Bhutan measures success through gross national happiness, GNH, a concept introduced in 1972 by the fourth king, Jigsinji Wangchuck. Where capitalist societies often treat money as the ultimate goal, the Bhutanese view it as secondary. For them, spiritual and communal well-being outweighs economic wealth. Religion, particularly Buddhism, is central to Bhutanese happiness. The World Database of Happiness consistently shows that religious people report greater happiness than secular ones, and Bhutan is the clearest example of this. Spiritual life and everyday existence intertwine seamlessly, reinforced by a deep belief in reincarnation. Weiner recalls meeting a woman who proudly referred to her husband as the Dalai Lama's brother in a past life, and she radiated joy simply from this conviction. The Bhutanese outlook on life is refreshingly light. They do not despair at failure, nor do they exult excessively in success. For them, personal triumphs and setbacks are insignificant when compared to the vastness of the universe. This cosmic perspective fosters calm acceptance and contentment, qualities rarely found in modern, achievement-driven societies. Qatar, wealth without happiness. Our next stop is Qatar, a nation that stands in stark contrast to Bhutan. It is perhaps the clearest example of the old saying, money can't buy happiness. Before the oil boom of the 1980s, Qatar was little more than a barren land with one road and a few scattered houses. 98% of the country is desert, a landscape many naturally associate with desolation rather than joy. But vast reserves of oil and natural gas transformed Qatar almost overnight. The ruling elite were generous with their newfound wealth, pouring money into creating a cradle-to-grave welfare state. Electricity, water, education, and healthcare are all free. Yet despite this extraordinary prosperity, Qataris report low levels of happiness. Shopping has lost its thrill. Leisure carries little meaning when daily life involves no struggle. Like a lottery winner who suddenly loses his sense of purpose and friends, Qataris find themselves weighed down by their riches. Culturally, too, Qatar feels impoverished. The centerpiece of the National Museum is little more than camel drawings. And when asked if they were happy, many Qataris seemed baffled, even offended. One man snapped that happiness or misery is irrelevant, since both are simply the will of God. In such a worldview, happiness lies beyond human control. The lesson is simple yet profound. It is hard to know true happiness without ever having experienced hardship. Iceland. Happiness through culture and imagination. Now let's journey north to Iceland, one of the most consistently happy nations on Earth. At first glance, it seems an unlikely candidate. The winters are long and brutal, with freezing winds and near constant darkness. Yet Iceland regularly ranks near the top of global happiness surveys. The capital, Reykjavik, is sometimes called a paradise of happiness. It boasts countless bookstores, record shops, art galleries, and coffee houses. And who fills these cafes? Poets and painters, of course. They come to write, create, or simply chat. In fact, Icelanders joke that one day they'll build a statue honoring the Icelander who never wrote a poem, and place it in the city square. With so many long winter nights, writing became a national pastime. Taxi drivers, fishermen, and hotel clerks are often published authors. Iceland's happiness is also fueled by its breathtaking landscapes, geysers, hot springs, glaciers, and volcanoes. Watching the northern lights dance across the sky or standing before a roaring waterfall feels like stepping into a fairy tale. It's no coincidence that Icelanders were the first to imagine elves and trolls. Folklore and myth are woven deeply into their national identity. Equally important is Iceland's cultural attitude toward failure and creativity. Children are encouraged to experiment with painting, sculpture, or writing. If they show talent, they pursue it seriously. If not, it's fine. They are free to keep trying new things until they discover their passion. This culture of acceptance has led to quirky works of art, some odd, some unpolished, but always created with sincerity. Icelanders take pride not in perfection, but in the joy of expression itself. Moldova, the unhappiest place on earth. Where would you guess the unhappiest country in the world is located? Africa, perhaps. Surprisingly, the answer is Moldova, a tiny strip of land in Eastern Europe, wedged between Romania and Ukraine. According to the World Database of Happiness, Moldova is the true center of misery. The biggest reason Moldovans are unhappy is simple: a lack of money. The average annual income is just $880. Moldova is not the poorest country in the world. Nigeria and Bangladesh fare worse in absolute terms, but its misfortune lies in geography. It is surrounded by wealthier neighbors. Poverty feels lighter when shared with others in the same situation. But when everyone around you is better off, the contrast breeds despair. Corruption also poisons daily life. In Moldova, even university professors are often bribed by students. Patients avoid young doctors, assuming they bought their medical diplomas rather than earned them. The country lacks natural resources like oil or minerals and depends almost entirely on agriculture. Culturally, Moldova suffers from an identity crisis. Tossed back and forth during World War II, it became part of the Soviet Union until 1991. Ever since, its people have struggled to define themselves. Russians claim Moldovans are basically Romanian. Romanians insist they are Russian. Stuck in the middle, Moldovans remain unsure of who they are. The result is a society marked by envy and resignation. Rather than striving to improve their own lives, Moldovans often find grim satisfaction in the thought of others, Russians or Romanians, being unhappy. In this sense, Moldova embodies a kind of passive, comparative misery that erodes all hope of happiness. Thailand. Smiles and the lightness of life. It would be impossible to talk about happiness without visiting Thailand, the land of smiles. Just as the Inuit have dozens of words for snow, Thais have many words for different types of smiles. There is Yim Chun Kong, a smile of admiration. Yim Thak Thon, a smile that says, I don't like your idea, but go ahead. And Yim Sao, a sad smile. For Thais, smiling is both art and philosophy. Their secret to happiness is disarmingly simple. Don't overthink it. Two common phrases you hear everywhere are, don't think too much, and don't be so serious. In Thailand, ignorance can indeed be bliss. The more you brood and analyze, the less happy you become. This has been backed by psychology. In one study, Tim Wilson and Jonathan Schooler divided participants into two groups. One group listened to classical music while reflecting on their happiness. The other group just listened. The result? The non-thinkers felt far more alert and cheerful afterward. Another pillar of Thai happiness is their ability to take life lightly. Business meetings are sprinkled with jokes. Even tedious tasks, like mowing grass under the hot sun, are reframed as playful activities. Thailand has happy toilets, happy pubs, and even a dish called double happiness. At the heart of it all is acceptance. Thais embrace fate, whether good or bad. If this life is filled with hardship, they look forward to the next. Their philosophy is simple. If you can learn to take life lightly, happiness will come naturally. The United Kingdom. Experiments in happiness science has proven that laughter is contagious. When we see someone smile or laugh, whether genuine or forced, we're likely to mirror it ourselves. But what about happiness? Can happiness spread the same way? A group of television producers in the UK wanted to find out. They chose the town of Slough, near London, widely considered one of the dreariest places in Britain. In 2005, the BBC launched a reality series called Make Slough Happy, with the tagline, If Slough can be happy, anywhere can. The experiment brought in 6 happiness experts to run a 12-week happiness training program for 50 volunteers. Their mission, to spread joy throughout the town. The volunteers hugged strangers, held hands in public, performed yoga and Tai Chi on the streets, and even danced in supermarket aisles. The antics made many onlookers laugh, and by the end of the series, residents reported that happiness in Slough had increased by 33%. Still, it was unclear whether this boost would last. The truth is that the British don't take happiness too seriously. Unlike Americans, for whom the pursuit of happiness is part of the national identity, the English approach it with a shrug. Happiness, in the UK mindset, is not a prerequisite for a meaningful life. This outlook is captured in a popular hypothetical. Imagine you're on a burning airplane. Would you rather be piloted by a grumpy veteran with 10 years of experience, or by a cheerful optimist who graduated flight school last month? The British answer is obvious. Competence matters more than cheerfulness. India. The futility of chasing happiness. India is famous for its rich cultural and religious traditions. Each year, thousands of Western travelers arrive in search of enlightenment, and many of them come looking for happiness. During his visit, Weiner attended a lecture by Sri Sri Ravi Shankar, one of India's most celebrated spiritual leaders. Shankar spoke of eternal bliss, but to Weiner, the words felt oddly empty, like a delicious low-calorie snack, easy to digest but lacking real nourishment. The talk seemed more entertaining than enlightening. In India, spiritual leaders are treated like A-list celebrities, often supported by corporate sponsors. Yet despite the theatrics, The core message remains strikingly clear and positive. Happiness should never be the main goal of life. Love will always prevail over happiness. Indians, by and large, embrace this philosophy. They see the pursuit of happiness as self-defeating. According to Hinduism, striving for happiness is futile. Suffering is the result of fate and karma. To resist it is to defy the will of the gods. In this worldview, researching or chasing happiness is not only pointless, but also a prime example of human folly. The United States. Wealth without happiness. The United States ranks near the top of most global lists related to economic power and consumer spending. But when it comes to happiness rankings, America falls far lower. According to Adrian White, a researcher at the University of Leicester, the U.S. ranks only 23rd in the world below Costa Rica, Malta, and even Malaysia. In the U.S., happiness seems to move in the opposite direction of wealth. Since 1950, the nation's wealth has tripled, but overall happiness has steadily declined. Psychologist David Myers observes that Americans are currently experiencing the lowest levels of happiness ever recorded. Depression, anxiety, and other mental health issues are rising. Divorce rates have doubled, violent crime has quadrupled, and teen suicide has tripled. Why? Much of it stems from expectations, the belief that money should bring happiness. When poor, you tell yourself, if I had money, I'd buy a designer bag and be happy. Later, when wealth arrives, you splurge, filling your closets with luxury goods. But instead of joy, you feel disappointment. The promise of happiness through money rarely delivers. Work culture is another factor. Americans increasingly prioritize careers over family and friendships. Surveys show that work hours continue to rise while leisure and social time shrink. This reflects the country's relentless ethos of striving, never being satisfied, always wanting more. That very dissatisfaction fuels unhappiness. Yet there is a silver lining. Americans remain deeply optimistic. Despite low rankings and grim statistics, 2/3 of Americans still believe they will be happy in the future. Every nation defines happiness differently, and each employs its own strategies to cultivate it. In truth, it is nearly impossible to say which country is happiest or unhappiest. Much depends on the beliefs and perspectives of its people. There is no universal formula for happiness. Instead of relying on theories or comparing ourselves to others, perhaps the best approach is to value our own lives as they are. After all, even in the happiest countries, some people suffer, and in the unhappiest places, some still find joy. Reading Eric Weiner, as the Geography of Bliss, felt less like going through a book, and more like taking part in a fascinating journey across cultures, landscapes, and philosophies of happiness. What struck me the most was not just the variety of answers people give to the question, what makes us happy? But how those answers reflect deeper values, histories, and even contradictions within each society. I found it powerful that countries like Bhutan define success not by GDP, but by gross national happiness, reminding us that well-being can be a national priority. Meanwhile, Qatar's wealth without happiness showed how prosperity alone doesn't guarantee joy. Switzerland's discipline, Iceland's creativity, Thailand's lightheartedness, and even Moldova's despair each highlight the many paths and pitfalls on the road to human fulfillment. Weiner's narrative made me reflect on my own life. Am I chasing the wrong things, like material comfort, while neglecting the simple sources of meaning, such as relationships, community, and purpose? The book doesn't offer a one-size-fits-all formula, but it gently suggests that happiness is less about where we are and more about how we live, how we connect, and what we value. Ultimately, the Geography of Bliss reminded me that happiness is not something to be found at the end of a journey, but something to be cultivated in the everyday through gratitude, balance, and perspective. It's both deeply personal and universally human. So, what's the lesson? Happiness doesn't have a single address. It's not only in wealth, or in traditions, or even in freedom alone. It's in the way people choose to live, connect, and find meaning. Maybe happiness isn't out there to be found, but something we create every day within ourselves.